On the next three, they're all in radians, but you still do the same thing. So your reference angle for 4 pi over 3, that is pi over 3 away from the x-axis. Your quadrant that you'll be located in, so if you get a visual of where this is at, it's 4/3, so that would be 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3 over here. So that would leave you with pi over 3 as your reference angle, and you're located in quadrant 3. And your ordered pair for pi over 3 would be 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Both of them will be negative because you are in quadrant 3. So what is sine of 4 pi over 3? Sine is your y value, so it's negative square root of 3 over 2. And there's your answer. Okay. Secant of 11 pi over 6, reference angle. Remember, pi over 6 is a 30 degree, so if you go 11 pi over 6 around, you almost make it a full rotation, but not quite. And so what is left here would be another pi over 6. So your reference angle is pi over 6, located in quadrant 4, with an ordered pair, because x is positive and y is negative. That would be square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2, with y being negative. So secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Cosine is your x value. So take the reciprocal of cosine and you will have your exact value for secant. So that'd be 2 square roots of 3 over 3. And since that was positive to begin with, it is positive at the end. So 2 square roots of 3 over 3. So the negative doesn't have anything to do with the secant one, only sine and cosecant. And so for the last one here, your reference angle is pi over 4. You're going in the negative direction. You'll be pi over 4 units away from the x-axis. That's in quadrant 2. That means x is negative and y is positive. And so since you're looking for tangent, you take y divided by x, or sine divided by x. So that's the square root of 2 over 2 divided by the square root of 2 over 2, which would represent negative 1. So in each of these questions, we're looking for the exact value, that ratio, for that particular angle. Once again, we're dealing with angles of 30, 45, and 60. Pi over 3 is a 60, pi over 6 is a 30, and pi over 4 is a 45 in terms of your reference angles with radians and degrees. Alright, and the last set that we're going to be going over is what's called a quadrantal angle. This is an angle whose terminal size lies on an axis. So when you're dealing with, here's your initial, your terminal, so that would be if you're landing on 90 degrees or pi over 2, or if you go over here, which would be 180 degrees or pi, here, which would be 207 degrees or 3 pi over 2, and if you make one full rotation, that is 360 degrees or 2 pi. So those are the angles that we are going to be looking at as we go and do this. So the question kind of is, on the unit circle, what does this ordered pair represent, just like we did the rest of them? Well, from the origin, you're going 1 unit to the right and not going up, so that ordered pair would be 1, 0. At 90 degrees or pi over 2, you're not going left or right, so that's 0, but you're going 1 unit up, so that's at 0, 1. When you go to the left 1 unit, that's negative 1, but you're not going up or down. And then you're just plotting these points on the axes, and then you're going down 1, but not left or right, so that would be 0, negative 1. And those are the ordered pairs that you want for each of those quadrantals. So at 0 or 2 pi, this ordered pair is 1, 0. At pi over 2, it's 0, 1. At pi, it's negative 1, 0. And at 3 pi over 2, it's 0, negative 1. Do not memorize these. These are things that you can just figure out by looking at a unit circle and going 1 unit left, 1 unit right, 1 unit up, and 1 unit down when you plot points. So those are the points, and so now as we go through and identify each of these, remember, sine represents your y value, cosine is your x, tangent is y over x, or sine over cosine, Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so that's 1 over y. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so that's 1 over x. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, so that's x over y. So you're going to use that ordered pair. There's no reference angle, there's no quadrant. You have the ordered pair. So just go through and answer each of these questions. So for sine of 0 degrees, that would be 0. That's your y value. Cosine would be 1. That's your x value. Tangent would be 0 divided by 1, which is 0. Cosecant is the reciprocal of 0, which is 1 over 0. That is undefined. Secant's 1 over x, which is just 1 over 1, so that's 1. And cotangent is x, which is cosine over sine, that's 1 over 0, 1 over 0. So 1 over 0 is undefined. And so now you see that the 30, 45, 60, those all had values. But some of these quadrantals will actually be undefined. And you can go through the other three angles the same way. Let's do one more. So let's look at pi over 2. So sine is your y value of 1. Cosine is your x value. Tangent is y over x, so that's 1 divided by 0, which is undefined. So now at pi over 2, it's undefined. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so that's 1 over 1. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so that would be 1 over 0. So we have another undefined. And then cotangent would be x over y, so 0 over 1 is 0. And so I'll fill out the rest of the chart, but that's what you're doing every single time. So I went ahead and filled out the rest of the chart for pi and 3 pi over 2. So those are your 4 quadrantal angles. Add in your 3, 30, 45, 60s in your 4 quadrants. And you have a total of 16 angles that we're going to become very familiar with throughout the trig unit and beyond. So then the last thing I'm going to ask you is some of the quadrantals. So find the exact value of each of the following. Now when you pay attention, reference angle, there's none. It doesn't fall on a reference angle. It falls on an axis. Quadrant, no quadrant. All right, once again, it falls on an axis. And so really what we want to focus on is what's that ordered pair to help us answer this question. So sine of 5 pi over 2, once again, kind of getting a visual as to where it's at. So that's 2.5. So we know this is 1 pi, this is 2 pi, this would be a half. So right here is 5 pi over 2. That ordered pair, because you're going from the origin, not left to right, just up 1 unit. So that ordered pair is 0, 1. Sine is the y value. So sine of 5 pi over 2 is 1. Cosine of negative 180. So negative in this direction. Negative 180. What's that ordered pair? So you're going to the left 1. So that's negative 1. You're not going up or down. And so cosine is the x value. So therefore cosine of negative 180 would be negative 1. And then tangent of 43 pi. If you're thinking about radians, 1 full rotation is 2 pi. Every half of rotation is pi. So you got pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi, and you just kind of keep going around. So all the odd pi's end up on this side, and all the even pi's end up on this side. So 43 pi will end up over here after you rotate around a bunch of times, and that ordered pair once again is negative 1 to the left, 0 up and down. Tangent is sine over cosine, or y over x. So that would be 0 divided by negative 1. So tangent of 43 pi is equal to 0. So that's part 2, going through and really adding in the rest of the angles in the entire circle for the 30, 45s, and 60s, and then your 4 quadrantal angles.